that Wilson County needed in a bad way. And I will tell you that we're really starting to pick up momentum on countywide economic development. And I'm excited about who's in attendance today. I want to thank Common Memorial, Bob Gillespie, Tom Klein for being here today. Appreciate it. And of course, Mr. Gray, JPB. So we want to thank you for all you did in the community. And we have a number of members in the audience here that I want to thank. These are the folks that have stepped up early on and contributed to the meeting. I want to thank the City of Poe. City of Poe just they took it to their council and they approved $10,000 for this group. It's right off the bat, so we appreciate that in their perspective. But what's been cool for me is when I talk to people, and what we're doing, there's some excitement because of the collaboration. So that's why we're in both Texas right now, because we started out in Louisville in September with our first meeting, went to Stockdale in February, I believe, and then here we are on a rotational basis. And then our next meeting will be in August in the rain and Raven Park. So we're looking forward to that. But that's kind of the whole point, is rotate amongst these accounts, because we're bigger than each of our accounts, right? We all reside in a community. Every one of these communities has a unique personality. We know that. But the county as a whole needs to be thinking about regional economic development. And boy, it's coming, folks. Wilson County is really an untapped market for a lot of reasons, but it's coming. So thank you for Poe for having us down here. I want to also thank Lizzie and Echo. We've got the whole crew over there. We want to thank them for giving us a tour this afternoon. Charles Echo is going to be providing us an update on the New World Screwworm threat. And some of you may not know what that is, but I'll explain in just a moment. It's something that can impact all of us in the future. All right? Now, this is a repeat for some of you, but I want to keep saying this because we have a new. We were set up as a 501c6 nonprofit corporation. Membership group. It's named Wilson County Economic Development Corporation, but technically we're not the county government. Okay? The county has provided us dollars, just like any of these other entities, and that was kind of our seed money to get started. We'll probably continue Rail Park is one of his projects that he's extremely involved with. And if you know Terry, he will definitely keep you on the phone and say, hey, where are we at with this deal? Where are we at with this deal? And we need more of that. Thank you, Terry, for the work you're doing, because that's out there. That part that I mentioned here is going to be a huge asset to our county. If you're not aware of this, that's a park that's on the northern part of the county. 800 acres is in Wilson County, and then 200 acres is in Durham. So the majority of it is in Wilson. Already has rail to it, already in the park. And actually there's a setup there where they have a switching station already that they're able to switch the trains out there. So that's exciting. Now the other thing that's exciting, I talked to John Bosler just before I came to this meeting today, and John Bosler is one of the investors, owners, developers of Mission Rail Park. I said, John, we've been talking about Mission Rail for a long time. You need to show me the money first. Okay? Well, I went by the P.O. box and the check's there. Okay? So the Mission Rail Park, once our board approves it, will be a pension member of our organization. All right. So thank you, Mr. John Bosler. He couldn't be here today. Another thing I want to mention, this is something that I think all the city entities need to be aware of. Opportunity zones. You know, Mission Rail is in an opportunity zone currently. Now, unfortunately, these opportunity zones are established by there has to be a nomination process that the treasurer designates what these opportunity zones will be. And I'm sure they use economic development criteria to do that. So Mission Rail will remain an opportunity zone through 2028. There are new opportunities for opportunity zones in this county. Now, unfortunately, to a certain extent, the only opportunity zone so far designated in Wilson County is if you can picture, let me do this. I don't go back. I go back to the page right there, and I just figured it out myself. The bus stops it correct. Okay, so I'll just show you where the opportunity zone is now. Is you just take this area here all the way to the county line. That's the opportunity zone. That's the only thing that's not designated in Wilson County. So it's where 87 and 97 meet. If you just kind of draw a line there and you go all the way to the eastern county line, that will be the opportunity zone. So why that's important to Stockton is because we need to make sure that that stays the opportunity zone. So there's a nomination process that will actually be handled starting July 1, and that will go through, I think, the end of August. You know, Carlos, if it's the end of August? Yeah. So, now, we've been told that there's not an opportunity to designate another track. I don't know if I totally believe that. And I think we're still going to give it a shot. Okay? Because I think it's important for Mission Rail to stay involved. So that's why it's important for us to have relationships, Secretary Ryan Keenan, our U.S. House Member Monica Della Cruz. As you know, we're losing her with this current election. But that's why it's important to have those relationships. Once these type of designations get established, it's for a 10-year period that will start in January 1, 2027. Basically, what that does is it provides tax abatement incentives on capital gains. So when these corporations come in, they're investing big dollars, it's a tax abatement on capital gains. So that can be huge for you. Now, Mission Rail Park activity, Spur Materials is actually up and running real quick. Okay, they literally listened to Mr. Wagner, the CEO of Phelps Lago. He said that they've already connected power. They turned it off temporarily. They just want to make sure that it's working the way they want it to work. But that's how close they are. Okay, they manufacture ice cream cement for major commercial kind of building projects. And there's plans to even probably put in a batch plant there that will probably handle traditional concrete type products. There's going to be huge moves Terry, remember the manufacturer? The big electrical transformers. There we go. Come on, Aaron, help me out. But huge transformers. So what was interesting when we went on that visit is when they saw the transformers on that Paris heavy haul site, some of that was their competition, and they were just kind of like, wow, this is crazy. We got even a transport guy right across the street from where we could think of going. Okay? So those are all neat and unique opportunities as we move forward. The other thing I'll point out, Mayor Evan, you feel free to chime in anywhere here on your side of the code. But, you know, Floresville, if you hit up 181 across from Richardson Chevrolet, and of course the Jeep dealership down, see there's a subdivision going on 181. So that's a pretty big development there. You see now Sherwood Williams with the name on it. So, you know, when they're bringing more commercial development in these areas, what's that? 7? Okay. Yeah. Now, I'm not sure if that's a factor picture because there's a lot of stuff floating around. Okay, where are they located? Okay. Y'all hear that? 7 group. So it's a coffee. Yeah. Yeah, so as he mentioned, you know, Chick-fil-A is still in the works. I think there's been some negotiations, you know, things for the school, et cetera, but we don't know where that's going to go. And then the other one you mentioned was maybe a QT, yeah, which is a big convenience store chain. Do we know where that might be? Probably not public just yet. Okay. Now, let me also just say this. Aaron, I want to compliment you. Number one, we've had a lot of CEOs that fell through the years. But I will say this, you're absolutely the best CEO we've worked with. And what's also nice is that you're so willing to work with you and just not hiding behind desks. The other thing too, if you work in the economic development world, you better get to know Mr. Wagner because he's the first person they contact and community to community electricity. And you need to be sure that the power can be generated.
So the biggest thing is all you have someone coming in, make sure the first year because it takes a lot of time for some materials, some transformers, other things. Make sure we know about it early on. We want to make sure we start out appropriate time frame and make sure our design can be done at the appropriate time. So please make sure yourself, even if there's an end, please give us that heads up so we can start planning on it and ensure that our facilities can handle the capacity.
Very good. Well, thank you. Mayor, would you like to mention anything? You have any You bet. So you heard. Thank you for everybody. Stockdale, of course. Jim, would you like to mention anything that's going on there?
Data centers coming. Solar farm is already hit the ground running, so I would think approximately 10,000 acres have been purchased or being purchased for these data centers, which will have an influx of 3,000 to 5,000 people for the next 10 years, possibly up to 1,000 permanent jobs is what we're being told. So the dynamic of Stockville is about to change quite a bit.
Information about the water source is that, because that's huge.
It is.
Water, is there tax or something you can enlighten us with?
Are you saying tax? Is that what you're saying?
Water.
Tax.
Water.
So what's happening is, I don't think they figured, they're saying closed loop for sure. They're saying they're going to try to bring out the brine water, so it won't affect good fresh water, is what we're being told right now. And until they get into the permitting process, we're just kind of having conference calls right now, and I don't think they're exactly firm on what the end game looks like, but they're trying.
Can you eliminate the fresh water, like the Carrizo, access to the Carrizo?
When you're saying eliminate, you say
Like
not allowed to permit?
Right.
Well, I would guess do that. It would be evergreen. It would be green, and that
What
is,
was the question?
The freshwater resource that this gas center is going to use.
Well, so evergreen, of course, regulates approving that kind of stuff, but the state of Texas has established through the legislature what pumping requirements are. And so one thing I've been telling folks is that if we ever want to change any of that, it's going to have to start in Austin, Texas. Evergreen only enforces the laws. We can't do anything, don't get that up. Now, the conversations I've had with any of these data center type projects has been, at least the ones I've talked to, are very cognizant of the concern about quality. And so what some of them have done in El Paso, have done in Medina County, is they provided certain things that they could do a water offset, for example. Like in Medina County, corporation that came in there for that simply gave out grants to farmers and ranchers to change their irrigation practices that would save a certain amount of water to offset what their water usage was. So there are some things being done creatively that I think will offset down the road. The challenge that I have is that every one of the younger generation that inherits this property, they're putting in that because they see big numbers. And so in a state that's big on property rights, then we start having that battle about how can we control some of that. And the answer right now is probably you can't do it all. Okay. Now, I know even when Sid Miller was running for acting, he talked about designated ag zones. Well, that's going to be a tough battle too, because then you're simply telling somebody with their land that you can only use it for this purpose and you can't use it for anything else. So, you know, and I totally get all the concerns with the water. We're all concerned about that. But the main thing that we want to do is make sure that there are certain plans in place to conserve, certain plans in place to provide an offset on the usage, and so there's guardrails that can be put up. So before any taxing entity ever even contemplates an abatement or anything like that, those guardrails have to be in place that they have to abide by it. So that way we don't find ourselves later trying to do this. Okay. All of this right now is all speculation until it happens. Right? So, but anyway, great question. All right, so you got home development that's coming there. I think that's Lenore Mullins. Okay, housing is still a challenge for this area. And you know, if you notice, it's very expensive if you try to go find it. All right. Also, the audience is improving some basketball courts, soccer field, football courts, which is awesome. The Berman, you want to speak to? Y'all got a lot of things going on. Okay, I just kind of put it generic growth of retail commercial properties.
Yes, we have a new subdivision coming in that is on about 200 plus acres, and we'll be expecting about more than 600 homes. And then we also have a lot of retail that will be in front of this subdivision, and we also just got confirmed that we'll be on the ground.
All right, very good. Thank you, Felicia. Felicia is part of the economic development there. So is American Growth, and thank y'all for coming today. But anyway, so a lot of activity going on. I will say, just from Greater SHGX alone, there's about 3 to 5 different inquiries a week from companies looking to manufacture and expand their offerings or to set up shop here in the United States. That doesn't mean that every time one of those inquiries comes in, there's an opportunity to find a place for them, because some of them have very strict requirements in terms of what their needs are. But it's just incredible. You know, this stuff starts at the governor's office and then filters out to entities like Greater SHGX, and it comes out to all of us. Okay? So I think the biggest help that we could actually provide is we're going to continue to build out what are the needs in Polk, Texas? What are the needs in Laverne? You know, what kind of industry would you like to see here? Is there a property available? And if that's the case, then it needs to be on the Greater SHGX radar. Because then that way, when that comes in, they know, hey, we need to call Polk because they've got this Charles Eckel, and the work that Lizzie and Eckel has been doing on the front line of this whole screwworm concern. Now, some of you might ask, well, what does the New World screwworm have to do with economic development? Well, it has a lot to do with it. Because last I checked, Wilson County was in the top 20 counties for cattle in Texas. Okay? I don't know where we stand with sheep and goats, but if you enjoy eating and you think beef is high now, just let this happen. Okay? If you enjoy your pets, this could be a huge impact. It could be a huge impact on human challenges. Basically, in the 60s, I was talking to my dad about this because he lived through the screwworm problems in the 50s and 60s. And, you know, they dropped boxes of sterile flies back then to break the reproduction cycle. And these boxes would drop all over South Texas and probably the southern part of the United States. And he would find those boxes, you know, and they would drop from airplanes. And they got that under control. But the management aspect of it is incredible because anything moist, wet, bloody, open wounds, they can lay their egg in. And if you think management, if you have livestock in the room, if you think management of stuff now is nothing, you're going to have to get out there and doctor every neighbor. You're going to have to get out there and do all these proactive things that we're not having to do now. And so I thought this is a fitting program for South Texas because we do have a lot of hunting operations in South Texas would be heavily impacted. A lot of the ranchers have turned to more confined hunting type operations to supplement their income. And then of course the beef and the whole pet aspect of it as well. So Charles, come on up. We're going to hear from you. You know, in conclusion, while you're here for us, I wanted to say this, and what's wrong was here too. Y'all have done a phenomenal job bringing the family back home and incorporating this. And so thank you to Lizzie and Eckel for their work they've done since what, 1945. And a huge, huge employer in the community and a huge supporter of Wilson and program. Okay, so let's get started.
All right. Good afternoon. Appreciate you having us out here and the opportunity to get up here and talk about this. Just so, if y'all don't know, Lizzie and Eckel, we started in 1945. My grandfather and Mr. Ed Lizzie. We're now in our third generation on the Eckel side that's actively involved. And then we're in the fourth generation of Lizzie's that are actively involved. So still very much a family business. Work there with my siblings and my in-law, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law. So it's a pretty special environment. We work each day to try and advance our ball in each of those in nutrition, really. So why is a nutrition guy saying that they're talking about an international pest is an interesting thing that we'll get to towards the end. I'm not afraid to say this, but the Lord brought it to our plate, and we decided to take hold of it. So, wanted to start with that, but the main thing is, what is the New World screwworm? The New World screwworm is an obligate pest. So it is a fly that flies around, and it lands on a wound, and all the wound takes is the size of a tick bite. So think about how small the wound that is. When the females fly, they lay their eggs on that wound. Now, I'm not going to put pictures, but this is graphic, so forgive me. But I did save the pictures for another presentation another day because we're eating. But they fly around and lay their eggs, and the larvae infest the host. The host can be any warm-blooded animal. Now, we won't work on snakes, but chickens, dogs, cats, deer, cattle, sheep, goat, horses, name it, keep going. Humans. There's about 200 cases of human cases in Mexico that have gone on since it came into Mexico in 24. I believe there's something like 2,400 cases in Central America. And so a lot of the people that are without homes will be affected by it. And this is going to be something that we all kind of have to just prepare ourselves for and kind of wrap our heads around. So the economic impact on the ag side, as you can see, that they've estimated it to be $1.4 billion of economic impact in Texas alone, and then 10.6 in the U.S. total. So a huge economic impact. If you think about what agriculture brings, bringing the offshoots of agriculture, the tractors, the fuel, the energy, the equipment, the personnel, the employment, all of those people all have to live somewhere, they have to eat somewhere, they have to do things, and so that impact is yet to really be realized. What's a ranch worth if there's no animals on it? What's a truck worth if you have no cattle? So this really goes on, and really the issue we're up against now is the reemergence of it and the being right on the border. So the reemergence really started, we drove it down to Darien Gap, and we'll get into this, but which is in Panama, drove it down, and during COVID, because of the virus and lack of supplies and personnel, those flies got past that area gap, kind of got out. Well, those issues from COVID continued to grow, and then it just kept tracking up through Central America, and then finally hit Chiapas, Mexico, the southern state of Mexico, in November of 24. So it just has kept going on and on. So it is a blowfly in a species that's 8 to 10 millimeters long. So a blowfly lays maggots, but it is twice the size of a housefly. They're beautiful flies, if you can call a fly beautiful. It has this beautiful blue back with 3 black dorsal stripes and orange eyes. It is obvious. Now you'll see now, if you have something dead, you will see a blowfly that has big orange eyes and a gray back. Another 3 to 4 stripes down its back. Those are what they call secondary screwworm flies or just blowflies, but they lay maggots on dead tissue. Screwworms target live living hosts. Once that host dies, those larvae take off and they go into the ground. So a female will lay 200 to 400 eggs each time she lays. Figure half of that being female eggs. So you can see what the generational growth looks like. And then anything that is untreated pretty much is lethal, 100% lethal if it is left untreated after 7 to 14 days of once So it's a terrible thing that we all just need to be able to identify and understand. So the life cycle, that they'll be eggs for 12 to 24 hours. Those eggs then hatch, and they kind of lay. If you were to look at a wound, that female fly will lay those eggs right on the outside of that wound. And once again, a tick bite, like a pinprick or a thorn prick, when we're not looking at much, she'll lay those eggs right on the outside of that wound. Those eggs hatch, and then those small larvae make their way into that wound. Those small larvae aren't really much of an issue. They're pretty tender, they're easy to kill, but you have to be able to get onto something right away in order to see it. That larval stage lasts about 5 to 7 days. By that 7th day, they're deep into that tissue. And most of the time, if it's untreated at 7 days, you have other flies that are constantly laying on top of that wound. And so it's not just 200 or 400 flies per wound, it's whatever that next female that says, oh, perfect host. There's 200 or 400 more. There's another, it just keeps going on. And so you'll see these wounds that are unbelievable and unmistakable. The odor is what everyone talks about whenever they think about screwworms. It is a foul odor of decaying flesh. And yet the host is still alive. So some of the pictures, if you were to go home and look it up, do it cautiously, but you have dog necks that are completely eaten up by maggots. And it's just terrible. And they're living. So that's where that 5 to 7 days, that's where most of that tissue damage comes from. Once they are done with their host,
They fall out of the tissue and they burrow into the ground to pupate. That's 7 to 14 days. That's where they grow their wings and they become flies. After that 14th day, they get up and they fly. Males, they go off finding females. Females, they breed one time. That's the nice thing. Thankfully, we have New World screwworms, not Old World screwworms. Because New World screwworms, the females will breed one time for the rest of their lives. Old World, which is geographically different from the New World, because Old World would be in Africa, Middle East. Sometimes you'll find them in Australia, but that's on the other side of the world. Those females are breeding multiple times. So that goes on to 21, 28 days. They have their lifespan. The next generation comes on. The nice thing we have, and this just kind of talks about some of the things, but the nice thing that we have to rely on is called sterile insect technique, or SIT, where they take the screwworm flies, they breed them in Corp, Panama, and what they'll do is they have them in these big trays, and as those larvae roll off the pupate, they collect them, and then they sterilize them. So the issue we have right now is you don't really know, they don't have a way to just have male-only flies, so you have half male, half female. Well, the sterilized females don't really count, if I can say that. So it's the male flies. They sterilize them, and if there's a case, name the spot, Monterrey, Mexico right now, as an issue. So they go in there and they drop all the flies in Monterrey. The male flies will breed with the male sterile flies will breed with an unsterile female. Well, now she has sterile eggs for the rest of her life. So you stop the generational cycle with that one female. The issue is right now we need about 500 to 700 million flies produced, sterile flies produced every week. We have one plant that's in Corp, Panama, that's making 100 million flies per week. So we are way under our need. And there would be USDA, you'll see this down here at the bottom. USDA put 21 million into what was a sterile fruit fly facility in Chiapas, Mexico, for them to transition that into a sterile screwworm production facility. That's wonderful. We're glad for that. That will make an additional 60 to 100 million flies. The issue is we're not really sure when and where and how far along, or where did that money all truly go. So we've got to have a little bit of trust and work with, and the USDA is working with Seneca, which is the Mexican animal health group there. And so, but we have 21 million going to Chiapas, Mexico. Get that. So 60 to 100 million. Right now we're up to maybe 200 million on a good week. We're still in quite the deficit. So this last fall, they started talking about the plant in Moore Air Base. So they put together 610 million, 750 million is the total package for there to be an additional production plant being built here in Texas. It's down in Edinburgh. They are hoping that it will be able to start producing 100 million by December of next year. So we still have quite a gap. There's still a production gap, and then the maximum that plant should be able to produce is 300 million by 28 or 29, depending on the development. So once again, we are a couple of years away from really having the help that we need. And so there's some wonderful steps moving forward. But if you look at this gap, if you look at this up here at the top, this is when screwworms were eradicated in the United States. Now, if you look here, you can see 1980, that line comes across. So screwworms do not like the cold. Flies do not like the cold. Now, if there are pupa in the soil and it's cold, they will sit there and wait for the soil to warm up. Then you have that blossoming of But screwworms will sit here, so it was not until really 1981, with some flares in 1982, did we finally eradicate the screwworm from the United States, including South Texas. There's the Darien Gap where Panama touches Colombia. We did not eradicate them past that Darien Gap until 2001. So we chased this from 1960 to 2001. They have gained all of this ground back. So they're right here now, about 87 miles is the most recent, in 5 years. They moved through Mexico, so Chiapas right there. Shake, I apologize, but I'll leave you should see the shoot done. Here, from 1984 to 81, so they gained all that ground back in a year and a half. So it takes a lot longer for us to eradicate them than it does to gain that ground back. And the cases have just been really sad to see even on the human side. There's an active, that's the most current map that they have. So Chihuahua, as of about a month ago, had 0 cases. Chihuahua now has 4 active cases. They're kind of down here in the southern side. Tamaulipas, which comes up here to Laredo, comes all the way down to Brownsville. That has been gaining more and more steam. That's where our closest cases were outside of Nuevo Leon. So our 2 neighboring states to southern Texas are kind of not necessarily out of control. Because if you were to talk to them yesterday, they'd say, well, we're okay. We've got them under control. We're dropping flies, which sounds great. But if you think about the only place they're dropping sterile flies is in this blue polygon, which means all of these states, these southern states, Mexico City, Pueblo, Zacatecas, these states are now just blowing up with cases because they're not dropping any flies there. So the dam is just moving further and further north. Just issues to be looking at. So this has been becoming a bigger and bigger problem. Nuevo Leon, like Mr. Jason said, when you have rain, that rain exacerbates those flies and then the sterile flies, because when it's wet, those flies can repopulate. The states for pupating, that lifespan is much shorter. So they're having some really hard issues there. So it's, you look at this and you think, man, we're short on sterile fly production. We're short on for the longest time and really thankfully we have good relationships with Leon and Tamaulipas in terms of the U.S. government and Seneca. When we were down here, there were fights, there were payments being put out to different organizations in order for the company to even fly and put out sterile flies. But if you think about those things, you think about, man, $10.6 billion, that's one heck of an amount of money that I can't even really conceptualize. So what do? What can we do as producers and as business people? What's the option? And I'll tell you the brief story on this was we had a meeting at the Catholic Parish Hall here in town. There's a producer that came up here and was telling us about screwworms, and my dad said, "What do we do?" I said, "We don't know." So, okay, so he went home and he's got a little room with his old man chair. He's getting up there, and no offense. And so he sits there, and each morning he kneels beside it, and he prays. I'm not trying to, but this is how it happens. He sits there and he prays, and he said, "Lord, I don't know what we're supposed to do here, but if this hits the Texas, and if this really is realized, that the impact, what will happen to our business, what will happen to ranches and family operations as well, what do you do?" And for some reason, he heard the word ivermectin. So he got up off his knees and he ran down to the store and started searching. My dad loves ChatGPT, so that's where it started. And boy, we were in quite the rabbit hole there for about 6 months. But what we learned is that ivermectin, believe it or not, unbelievably well on New World screwworm market. The issue with ivermectin is that it does not last long within the body. So ivermectin in and of itself lasts about 2.8 days. That's the half-life, is 2.8 days. So from the moment you give a shot, say you castrate a steer, a deer runs through a thorn thicket, and you give a shot of ivermectin, that will give you about 2-3 days of protection, and after that, the protection's gone. So how are we going to tell producers to go give a shot every 3 days? You might get those cows up. You'll get them up the first time, you might get them up the second time, and that third time it's all fine. And so what's the option? The shots are not going to be the best way to approach it. Pour on, see if you can get fly spray, but how do you get your hands on a cow that just had a calf out in the pasture? You can catch that calf if you get there in time. How do you get to the cow? How do you protect your herd? And then if you go further, how do you protect the wildlife and the exotics of Texas? So we came up with this plan of putting ivermectin in cattle feed and in deer feed. We put out a little letter last June, May, and it did well, gained a lot of ground, and we've been called a lot of things in the last year, and that's okay, because we know where this came from. The thing about our approach is we don't want to be the sole proprietors. We don't want to be the profiteers. From the very beginning, we believe that every producer, every feed mill, anybody that makes feed for animals should be able to use ivermectin in the feed the right way. We don't need people going out there and just dosing up cattle or wildlife, because that's what we consume. But there has to be a way for producers to be able to get that in their hands and protect what they work so hard to have. So we looked at putting this into cubes and in deer pellets, started doing a lot of research. There's 13.1 million head of cattle in Texas. About 1.5 million head of sheep and goat. And the number was changed yesterday from Parks and Wildlife. It was 5 million head of whitetail deer. They now assume that to be 6 million head of whitetail deer. So how do you treat that? How do you take care of that? The good thing is that the one thing that all of these animals have in common is they all eat, just like we do. They are all used to consuming some type of feed. So how can we make feed that's going to be able to be that they're going to want to come to, and then medicate it to protect them? So you put it into cubes, you put it into pellets. You're now working with the FDA, the CBN, which is the Center of Vet Med, with the FDA. We've completed 2 studies. We're working on the next group. We're working on a single one right now, and then we'll have 2 more starting here in probably 2 to 3 weeks. That it's designed that they called us and they said, well, let's talk. They came up with what's called the emergency use authorization, which allows them to give approval, not full approval to where great, we're now a drug or now we can make drugs, but it is called an EUA approval, meaning it can only be utilized while it's an emergency, and once that emergency ends, you can't use it. So our target species are obviously cattle, whitetail deer. But did you know that Texas has the second largest amount of exotic wildlife in the world, only behind South Africa? So we have more than Mozambique, Kenya, Tanzania, Botswana, Namibia, thank you. Here in Texas, we have more than all of them except for South Africa. And a lot of these animals, if you think about Arabian oryx, they're pretty much extinct in their natural habitat. Scimitar oryx are. We have healthy populations here in Texas. Mountain bongo, as you see there, they're not threatened, but we have an unbelievable amount of mountain bongo here in the United States. Kudu, giraffe, zebra, mountain zebra, great zebra, Dama gazelle, which are endangered, huh? White rhino, an unbelievable amount of white rhino right here in the state of Texas. And it's all truly, a lot of these animals you can't hunt unless you have a CITES permit, which is one heck process, but the conservational efforts, because of Texas ranchers, we are back up. In the early 2000s, they put what's called scimitar works on an endangered list because they're extinct in their natural habitat. And so all the ranchers that had scimitars said, wait a second, we have plenty, please take it off the list. So they turned in their numbers, and that went from extinct in the wild to having a healthy population. It's remarkable what Texas ranchers have been able to do if we just let the market take care of itself. But we have to protect them. You can't put your hands on one of those. A kudu, a rhino, we have a better shot, but you can't keep giving shots to rhino because their skin is an inch and a half thick. When you keep getting a shot of that, well then now you have that wound and it takes a long time for that to heal. But if you think about the overall wildlife, exotic, and cattle markets in Texas, it's remarkable. It is unbelievable. The personnel that it hires, the homes that they have on their properties, the improvements that they put on their ranches, it's unreal. We have to be able to do something, and that's where we come into play. So I already said this, we're working on, we completed the first two, which was coming up with the dosage, and it was mathematical models that we built to be able to see what it looked like on a pharmacokinetic side. So we did that, and sent that to the FDA, so we started our pilot study last fall. Last fall we completed those, and I'll show you some of those graphs here in a second. In progress, we're working on a whitetail study right now where ivermectin is in the feed, and then we are getting ready to conduct a phase 1 and then a phase 2 cattle feed through ivermectin study. That the FDA is, we're working through that draft now, but they are 100% behind us on this. Office of the State Chemist, who's our regulatory group that we work under, they are 100% behind us. AgriLife, we were kind of Office of the State Chemist, AgriLife, and us are kind of all balled up into this grant for $3.3 million. They get, surprisingly, the vast majority of them, we get enough to kind of cover our costs, but they have come alongside of us and they're working with us through this whole protocol because this is something that we can approach. So here's some of the very first study on the cattle side. So what you're looking at here, so this was the basis of this. We didn't have the dry powder premix that needs to go in the feed. We just had the injectable version that we gave orally. Okay, so that's where we kind of just proved the concept. We were told ivermectin wouldn't work through the rumen. Well, let's try it. So we tried it. And this is it. So let's start down here. This green line is what ivermectin does with one shot. So if you come here and you castrate a calf, whatever the wound becoming, so you do it here, you give them that shot. You got about 3 days, and then it begins to tail off. And about here, I'll go here, it's about 6 days after the shot, ivermectin no longer works. The research is very clear on that. Doesn't work. So the red line is dormectin, which is Decamax. It's a higher powered dewormer. It kind of follows the same trends as ivermectin. So shot isn't an option. So here's the feed. So here's what I'm going to call a 1X dose. We give it every 3 days. So if you go out in the pasture, we bring those cows up and we give them a dose of ivermectin orally every 3 days on this very first study. So you have your day 1 there, we're at 26, dips down. That's after the second dose for 40 parts per million. So now we're up above dormectin. Our low just is right below the peak of dormectin, and then it's up and far away. So this proof of concept shows that one, these drugs, ivermectin and dormectin, are able to survive in the rumen and be able to make it into the blood. Where then when a screwworm larvae is consuming the flesh, is then paralyzed and killed because of the ivermectin's presence in that serum and blood. This is a 2X dose. They don't know what dose they want to go with. And so So this is why we do 2. You can see when this is much higher, where you don't have any issues up here in terms of resistance, as long as we're able to keep that up there. The important part is this blue section here is the depletion zone. So for 35 days, we drew blood every day. And that is what this blue zone is. You can see how fast it drops out of the body. So if you're needing to slaughter cattle from taking them to market, the concern would be the withdrawal would be so long that it would just be unobtainable for producers to get into. In 35 days, we end up at 1.2 parts per billion within the blood and 2.0 parts per billion in the blood. It's the exact same thing that you'll see 35 days post-injection shot. So from the ceasing of treatment, we're still safe and still well within the ivermectin levels. Really fascinating. Made us feel really good about ourselves because this needed to prove itself. So this was the second study that we just wanted to see what it would do in the feed. This was an actual feed group. So once again, you have your 2 lines. The black box is ivermectin, the white circle is chloromectin. The blue line is the 1x dose, and then the orange line is the 2x dose. So you can see that we're still up and above. Now we get into some real life things here. And this is where I'm not bashful on this. This is an issue. Why does it drop even though we're giving them feed? And that has everything to do with making sure that the mixture is able to mix such a small crystal like ivermectin efficiently. Said, okay, we have something to work on here. We can't have those levels drop. So now we're working with a premix company in Mexico that is going to apply that ivermectin crystal to a rice bowl. So now you have light densities within the feed. I'm getting technical here, but you have light densities of the feed, so then you don't have the sorting that we see here. But it works. This tells us that we can now put it in feed, run it through our pellet mills, which you almost see safely, the molecule stays together, and it shows up in the blood. So it works. Here's a deer study that we did. It's the same one that we did last fall, where we used the injectable ivermectin and gave it orally. This we gave every day. Deer go to feeders pretty much every day, if not every other day. They're almost addicted to feed. So deer are pretty easy. We don't have to go as high of a dose. We don't have to really worry about putting hands on them. Just put it in the feeder. So this shows that we're still, if you remember, so ivermectin got up to about 229. So we're at 40, 37, 57. As long as we're above that magic number of 29, we're good. 29.9, 31.45. So this proof of concept is all we needed to flip the switch. And that's where AgriLife got involved. That's where the Office of the State Chemist got involved. And it's been tremendous ever since. But we are sharing this with every feed manufacturer that we know. We talk often. We don't want to hold the keys to this. We just don't mind putting up the time and the effort to get the approval. But trueworms are going to be here. There's no one saying they're not coming. It just depends on how well we manage them once they're here. Will the impact, will decide how big of an impact it really has on the economic side. Florida has already banned live animal movement from South Texas to Florida, so no live animals should be able to move from like 5 or 6 counties down there to 8. And so that will happen even more. The closer they get to here, more states will say, I don't want you. So where does our beef go? Beef will go to the panhandle, but then the panhandle may say, we don't want you either. So what does it look like if producers don't have somewhere to go to market with their animals? What's it look like? In the 60s and 70s, there was an 80% death loss on farms due to screwworms. So what happens if you lose 80% of the farms? And what does that do to the hunting industry? What does that do to the ranching industry? Which goes back to what's a ranch worth with nothing on it. And so something to be looking for and to be the cattle won't go to market. I think people are gonna say, forget it, I don't wanna have to mess with this right now, so we have better solutions. The whitetail deer, we'll see how that goes, that wouldn't be realized for a couple of years. But I don't know of a single pasture in South Texas that doesn't have a affordable shelter, whether that's Wasatch or Catcall, all Florida. Just keep going. So this will be something interesting to watch. And it is something that we're pouring a lot of time into, is if we can get this done, it really will be something fascinating for producers to have as a tool. And so, with that, that's all I have. Any questions? Anything? You touched on a lot. I technical area. Yes, sir.
Just like I say, is a student that does with effectually the first prayer of the righteous avail much. Would this be not prayer?
Yes, sir.
Thank God for that prayer.
That's exactly right. No, you're exactly right. Yes,
They
sir.
also want to be mentioned when they come to tax dollars.
So the nice thing, so the sheep and goat, you can give them the cube. So the way we have it technically scheduled is for a quarter pound per 100 pounds body weight. The other thing is on the sheep and goat is that there's going to be the demand isn't as big. If I'm being real honest with you, it's easy for us to target the two, which is the cattle and the wildlife. In terms of when it started with the FDA, we said, how far, where do you want us to start? Just let's start. They really said, let's start with cattle. We'll worry about deer later. And so every time I ask a cattle question, I throw in a deer answer as well. So I'm kind of forcing that conversation. It's just too hard for me to bring sheep and goat in as well on every single thing. But once you get approval on the one, it's so much easier to come in on top and say, you've already given it. You see the PK pharmacokinetic studies done on whitetail deer. You can draw correlation to sheep and goat. And so now let's do it. What we're thinking, what we're hoping, is that Texas will be able to take care of Texas on the drug side. Obviously through the state vet and working through all that. That's what we're really hoping for. I'm holding FDA's hand all the way through this, and we're having a great relationship on this. And we're really hoping that once it hits Texas, it's going to say, get it done. And Secretary Rollins said the same thing. Once it gets here, you will have everything you need.
So then it's just as easy to do with dogs.
Cats and dogs, no problem, because you have Provecto, you have drugs, you can get your hands on them. It's not something that you'll necessarily need to have to feed. It'd just be something that you watch, whether that's the topicals or orals. So it's something you don't feed. The thing is like a lot of dewormers don't work, so it's a class called macrocyclic lactone. So it's a specific type of dewormers. And there's umpteen, I don't know if it's umpteen, but there's a lot of dewormers out there. It's all moxidectin, which is technically a macrocyclic lactone that don't work on screwworms. So while there's a lot of options out there, there's very few that actually work on the larva. And that's where ivermectin, chloromectin, Provecto works well. Fluoridators that are very good, that works really well. But because you get your hands on it, that would be a much easier task. The strays are going to be an issue. Stray dogs are going to be an issue. Stray cats, that they will be an issue.
So, I think some dogs are susceptible to having hormone or something that is a dog some, especially in cattle dogs, are susceptible to brain or barrier. How's that going to affect?
So on the dogs, I would not recommend the ivermectin. For the same reason I like heartworms too. I would go the Provecto side or the topical side.
If you have one on the ranch and you have the beef that is is it a time amount for that food?
No ma'am. No ma'am. So the majority of this is going to be able to be held in the body, but in terms of what's found in the manure, it's minimal. So that was the other thing. USDA, right now the USDA is using ivermectin on corn and in molasses tubs along the border. practice is already in play. But they did an unbelievable job on an environmental risk assessment. So they went through bald eagles and quail and hogs and howling, and they assessed all the species that might come in contact with it. And they found 0 issues to move forward. And they're pouring a pour on corn as it's getting loaded in the truck and they're putting it in the feeders. So you're measuring it, but you're not mixing it. You're not trying to ensure the perfect mix. So in terms of manure, we haven't seen any issues in terms of farms.
Yes, questions? When I tell deer in the area where I live, Castle Hills, we're not supposed to feed them deer.
That's right.
You planning on, like, I don't want to get particular here, 20% protein pellets, small pellets, are they gonna be, is that gonna be part of your feed? I don't think I'm gonna go to jail if I feed deer, but,
That's what you need to think. Parks and Wildlife. So there's some interesting dynamics to the screwworm response. There is a lot of politics in it right now. In the last 8 months, you all know task force calls. They will tell you the public are on a need-to-know basis, nothing else. But Parks and Wildlife, we've met with all of their leadership. They like this idea because there's no other option on the table or even in the pipeline that will be able to protect the state's wildlife. So in those areas where you're not supposed to feed, I guarantee you that those will be pulled off by Parks and Wildlife.
so we got to buy somewhere else?
No, where you'll be able to feed them.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, we've talked to Purina, Cargill, ADM, Dilly Feed and Grain, M&G, Thomas More. I mean, there's not a feed manufacturer, Fall City Milling, that we haven't spoken with about getting ivermectin. So the goal is to be able to have this as an option for anybody that needs it under a vet care. So I mean, there's going to be some vet involved in this, which is great. It protects you, it protects us. But yes, I'm going to say that the state is going to pull those, or maybe that's an HOA thing, I don't know. But I think they're going to pull all those stops.
If it gets to that.
Right.